So what's your involvement with all of this then, John?
River Pilot.
River Pilot?
Oh, was you?
From 64, getting dragged out of bed by my father at the middle of the night. He was a dock and harbour pilot and a boatman in the docks, but river pilot on the hull.
Oh, I didn't know he
So
was interested in...
Oh,
well, we all was down Sparby, weren't we?
Absolutely. Well, it was all the thing from... I started, as I say, 15-year-old, which I didn't take very kindly to, but you like to stay in bed when you're 15, but get up.
Yeah. Oh.
And then I used to
Stay in bed?
just
What's that?
listen to what he was saying as we were backing up the river and pick his brains
That's right, yeah.
before he had a few, which they all did in them days, of course.
Yeah.
And then eventually you get familiar with it all.
You lived near Broadheads, didn't you?
Yes.
On the river bank there.
Yeah, right next to the drain.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So we were right near the old harbour, River Hull, living Hodgson Street.
Right.
So North Bridge, between North and Drypool, was the main swap over area with the Humber pilots and the mudmen. There was my father and there was a chap called Tom Berry.
Tommy Berry, I remember him.
Tom had his lad who's my age, who helped his dad, and so it's a family thing.
Yeah.
Going back before then, it was the Drapers. I don't know if you've heard of the Drapers.
Yeah,
They were the scrap.
Scrapper, I remember
yeah, well, it was
Albert Draper?
Albert,
well, it wasn't him. It was
a
a
scrap
guy
match.
called. My grandmother said they called him Cornelius George Draper. He was the initial dock and harbour pilot, and he lived on Holborn Mount, which was
Holborn
opposite
Mount,
where we lived.
Yeah, Holborn Mount.
Big houses.
I was down there the other day.
And he had a brass plaque on his front door that said, I don't know where that went, but it was. I remember it as a young fella being on the door. And then my grandfather helped him tie the ships up and stuff on the river and in the docks. And then he finished it, Mr. Draper. But my grandfather, I don't think he actually did the piloting.
No.
He didn't get to that level. But my father, when he came out of the Navy after the war, he was an engineer. And my grandfather passed away in, I think, 46 or 47. And my father swapped careers. But he had to pick it up himself because he hadn't had like I had him. He didn't have anybody,
right.
So but he had the naval background, which helps, because he'd been in the war for 6 years, and then he became a River Hull pilot full time and dock boatman and stuff. And as I say, then in the 60s, yours truly came up through the ranks, as it were.
Press gang.
Well, I was. I mean, I didn't want to say that, but you didn't really have a choice. It was a case of come on, we'll get up.
We all still meet on Christmas Eve day.
You don't, do you?
Yeah, Stevie, Broadhead.
Oh, bloody heck.
Two Swapmans, Dave Lyons, Dennis and Paddy, Dave Lyons, Mick Stevie.
Reggie Jackson?
No, he don't come.
Oh, Reg.
I see him now and then.
Yeah.
But Go Brown, remember him? Gordon, all them. Yeah, we all meet.
Yeah, and it was, as I said to Lou, it was...
Do you remember this? Do you remember when they called me Killer?
Oh, crikey, yeah, of course, Killer. Our girl met you not that long ago, didn't she?
Exactly.
Because she reminded you of that tenner that you let.
10 pence.
No, but it was the community was all centred around that area of near North Bridge, wasn't it? It was, and of course, there was a drain where North Bridge is, it still is. There was our drain, wasn't there? And we used to fish in that drain.
Yeah. He said he did, yeah.
Did you used to fish it?
I've never.
But then you'd hear the bells go for North Bridge.
That's
and then you'd see the bridge go up, and then the coasters. And as I said to that young fella, in the 60s and 70s, and maybe up to early 80s, that river was incredibly busy.
Oh, yeah.
I think at one point, collectively, there was over 300 movements.
You could nearly walk across on barges.
You could on the
weekend.
They were everywhere.
You had to leave the gap.
50 foot up to North Bridge, but sometimes it wasn't. You had to physically move them out the way. Because as I said, because the ships used to come in long before Mountain Bridge. The coasters would come in past the pier on a 45-degree slant because Sammy's Point was covered in mud. You could go around there very easily, which one or two did, because them Humber pilots were not big fans of our place. They're like the ducks, and they didn't like scrambling on the
Too
barges
hard, wasn't it?
in the
Too
rain
hard
and
for
ice
them.
and
Yeah.
snow in case they slipped and fell in, which I did once, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Then you'd cut across at 45 degrees towards where the deep is now.
Yeah.
Then you'd go where Mighton is now. There was on the starboard side, on the east side, the dock side, Victoria, there was a big warehouse. It was called Humber Creek. It was John Goods.
John
Right
Goods,
to the
yeah,
corner.
yeah. Well,
So
yeah.
what they did, and then you dropped your
John
starboard
Goods.
anchor and spun round to starboard to swing round if you had the room, as he said, with the barges.
Well, there was barges as well,
Yeah,
wasn't there?
and then
John
you'd back
Goods.
up through the gap that was left to where Ranks Mill was, which was Draypole Bridge. The harbour master's office was on the west side, and
That's
then
right.
you'd swap over with the guy with his white shirt and his tie and his been to sea for 50 years, and we hadn't, but we had the local knowledge. That's what it's, and then we'd back them up as far as Stone Ferry. As far as Stone Ferry, or it was ever so busy. It was just thriving. It was. You were called a mud pilot.
Yeah, that's that
because
phrase,
you were
it was-
uncertificated in the likes of going to sea
Right.
and sitting exams, and it was. There's lots of creeks all over the country, but you were local knowledge. You knew the river. You knew
Yeah, it was
where the mud was.
hard river, wasn't
You
it?
knew the depths for the
Shifted.
berths for the different tides, and then you were given the job based on your local knowledge. Because if it's a new ship, they didn't know where they were going, and you had that local, and it was a pass down from father to son. But they said, you guys will be the last guys.
Right.
If there's a future generation, which there wasn't there?
No,
'Cause
no,
it
probably-
finished. Say if I'd have had a lad who wanted to do follow on like I did from father, it wouldn't have been a case of, well lad, this is what you do. So one of the last things my father said to me in Hull Royal was, because he knew I was going to continue when required, he said, I'll be stood on the west side of Scott Street Bridge.
Yeah.
And he said, I'll be watching you come round there. So every time after he'd gone, I always remember, things stay in your mind.
Yeah.
And I'd be coming round that bend, I'd have put a few kicks ahead to get you around what I've just said. And then as I passed the bridgeman, when it was working, I'd think, good morning, father. I never saw him though.
I've done
I never
it.
saw him, but he said, I'll be there watching you.
I was
It's
hardest.
just
It was
one-
hardest.
It's just
Keep
one
you
of
on your
them.
toes,
It's just
Yeah.
one of them things.
Yeah,
But it
it
was an important part of a lot of people's lives.
It was.
But I remember once I said to a captain, we dropped the starboard anchor, and he said, well, no, I don't want to. I said, well, keep what I've just said, when you come around the
Stops you
bends, if
pushing.
there's a strong flood tide.
We've done it on barges, we've done
And he
we've had
said,
to
no,
do it.
I'm all right, Mr. Powell. I said, fair enough, sir. You know what I'm going to say next, don't you? We came round one of the bends, the tide caught out of the port of the starboard bow, whipped it right round into a warehouse. We were stuck right across the river, and I said, what? He said, what do we do now? And I said, well, it was your choice,
Bit
sir.
late now, isn't it?
No, well, it is. It's pilot's advice, captain's orders.
That's
They
right,
can tell you to sit down and
It's
shut up.
It's basically their boat.
It's their boat,
Yeah,
you're there to
captain.
advise, but they're employing you for your local knowledge.
Yeah.
And if they want to disregard that, that's their choice. But I bet he wished he hadn't, because we were stuck.
Yeah.
In fact, we nearly missed the tide, and he smashed some of his balance. When I was learning the job from Fatherkins, there was once between North and Draypole Bridge, when the barges was there, Neville, you got on and off from the barges, and he slipped getting off. I was already off, and sometimes you were higher up. There was no ladders. It's not like in the docks where you have your companionway. Sometimes you had to jump. I mean, before I was on the job, my mother said he jumped off a ship once onto the top of one of these dumb barges that were lined up. And went straight through the tarpaulin. And luckily it had cargo in. If it had been empty, you're talking the height of this room to the well, it killed him. But it went straight through the tarpaulin, because there was they had the timber covers, then it wasn't hatches. And luckily it went into the grain.
Right.
Otherwise it probably. But this time I'm just mentioning to you, he slipped, and I grabbed him as he fell down, grabbed him, and half his body went, and it was fast flowing, he could have been swept away, people went in, didn't they?
Yeah,
it wasn't
yeah,
unknown for somebody
They
to.
didn't come back out, did they?
you always asked what the draft was, because it was relevant. And the further up the river you went, because rivers you're going up, aren't you, to flow down, so you get less water the further up you go. So a berth at Stone Ferry would maybe have 2 or 3 foot less water on the berth than at North Bridge or Wink. See what I mean? So you needed to know the draft. Then you'd look at your, because there was a scale of the berth. I remember it. I've got it somewhere from father and his grandfather, whatever, where you had the deductions, because you just have to use a plumb line. What you do is, given the tide at Albert Dock, which you used Albert Dock as your basis. So what you do is, I didn't do it, it was already pre-done, and because all the wharfs were regularly used and the ships were sitting on the bottom, they kept the same. It didn't change much. Now we're totally different. But I remember once just double checking, not long after he'd gone, when I was like asked to do it, just to double check. So you just get a line and you drop it down at slack water, so you knew what the tide was at Albert Dock. So you measure it maybe 14 foot, and just double checking when you hit the bottom. When it was slack water, you can feel it at the bottom, the weight, and then you just double check, because that was important. Because if that was wrong, yes, you'd have the water in the channel, because the channels kept clean with the every time the tide ebbs, it swills it out. But if you get to the berth and you can't get alongside and you're stuck in the middle, that's no good. That happened a few times, especially on Scott Street Bend. You get stuck on that bend and you just sit in the middle. You wouldn't keel over because it was quite, but you'd be in the middle of the river where you couldn't discharge. You know, I remember it happening once. You know, RBL Forge Wharf, back of Spiders.
Oh yeah.
He got stuck with one in the middle of the river, and the tide was going out, and it was a calculated risk. When it's gone high water, you get a period called slack water where nothing happens. The run up stops, and then it starts going out. And he took a risk to Fatherkins to try and get there. It was only another few hundred yards, but the ebb tide started pushing out, and then you start going all. And anyway, that ship ended up stuck in the middle of the river for 12 hours. But what they did was, from the wharf, they brought a lot of piping, RBL. They actually fed pipe work all the way from the shore, right down to, and somehow managed to get the pipe work onto the ship and discharge it in the middle of the river.
Right.
Yeah, but it blocked the river, and like Neville with his bar, you couldn't get past. So it was an obstruction.
Yeah.
But it was a case of once you can't do anything. You can't move a ship when it's stuck on the bottom of the river, can you? I mean, that's it.
That was always a problem coming down Lake. If you was coming down on the ebb tide, you go around the corner, you don't know what's around the corner.
Yeah.
Somebody's stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
That's it. Bang.
You see, it's like a fish. You always need to be head to tide.
Yeah.
If you've got the tide, and I've done it lots of times when you've been late, if you've got a tide ebbing and you're going the same way, all your steerage with your rudder, it's based on the water coming from the bow, the sharp end, down ports, and that's how you steer. When it's the other way and the tide's pushing the wrong way, you'll lose your steerage. Plus, on a narrow area like ours, it doesn't matter so much on the Humber and the Trent and that. You've got a narrow with the bends and that, you lose your steerage, as he said, and it can be very, very dangerous to a point where you just lose it completely, and you can't even stop.
It matters on the top end of the Trent when we used to be gravelling.
Did it?
You come round some of them corners, there's a gravel ground.
Well,
that was it. You had to run yourself.
That main one on the Trent was Morton's Corner. Do you remember that? Morton's Corner.
Stony.
You had to come back on yourself.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, Stony was worse than Morton. I don't know whether you went round that one, did you? You will have done. If you went up to Lincoln.
I can't remember that.
Morton's at the bottom end of...
Was that near Gainsborough, isn't it?
Yeah, bottom end of Gainsborough's Morton. Stoney's the top end when you go through the bridge and go around under the railway bridge. Because there's a railway bridge there and the corner's there and you think, I'm going to go under that, what you do.
Yeah. I know what you mean, yeah.
And you used to get gravels of ground all over the bloody place, didn't you? And if you was loaded, there's just nowhere for it to go. You just run yourself aground. Because
you have to wait, don't
you? You wait in, otherwise.
Yeah.
And another problem was you coming down after the tide before. If somebody had been aground, all the sand would build up behind them. You did that in because you didn't know it was there. That would stop you then.
It sounds like really highly specialised knowledge.
It's local knowledge, is this?
Just what you
It's just passed down And it's trial and error as well, you know, you've got, and then it becomes just like a lot of things, part of your life.
Even the language you're using is really sort of
Yeah.
specialised, you know.
But it must have frightened, well, it did frighten a lot of these, especially captains, even though they're only little vessels, these coasters, they go in the docks. I mean, there is creeks wherever, but I don't think there was anywhere like ours. I don't think, I've never had anybody say, you know, this isn't, you know, blooming heck. You know, it was, sometimes it was not frightening to the point where it was just so busy at times, when it was a busy tide, and everything we've discussed, that these guys must have thought, bloody hell.
Yeah, what have I come to? Yeah.
Well, apart from not knowing where they were going,
Right, yeah.
they were pretty much in your hands, because it was normal to us, but it was a bit chaotic. I don't think they'll have had it anywhere else. Oh, what we saw with barges running into,
No,
it just doesn't happen anyway. It just didn't happen anyway.
Is there any superstitions attached to it?
Yeah, don't wear green.
Don't wear green.
Green jumpers, that's what I got told.
Don't whistle, that I got told, don't whistle them.
He used to wear his belt with a buckle at the side so it didn't get caught in the wind.
Yeah.
Because if you ground, the wheel spins.
Yes.
Anything in the
Well,
road.
somebody got
break your
killed
arm,
there. I
break your
remember a
arm,
young
whatever.
kid getting killed because
Yeah.
it smacked him.
I had a picture of a sloop in the early 19th, coming through Scott Street Bridge in about 1910 or something, back with a big sail on. It's absolute, and that was how it was for time immemorial before the coasters started. What I was on, and it was a different era, in the sail era. That must have been enchanting. That, don't you think?
Yeah. That's the only regret I have. We never took photos when we was on barges.
That's the same as me.
We didn't,